Today we are doing a lesson for Standard 10 Biology, the circulatory system. This is part 1 of the lesson, and in this lesson we are going to study everything about the blood. Now before we start studying about the blood, we should understand why we need circulation of various fluids in the body. What is the need for circulation? What is the need to transport anything in the body? Now if we look at the digestive system, food enters the digestive system, it is broken down into simpler forms, and then it is forms in which the body can absorb it and use it easily. Now if the alimentary canal is breaking down the food, this broken down food, the simpler version of food, has to reach all the cells in the body. Now who is going to do that? The blood is going to carry this food through, so that's why there's a need for transport. And gases in our respiratory system, the oxygen is entering in via the lungs and carbon dioxide is being removed from the body. For that also transportation is again required. So as the oxygen enters the lung, it goes via the blood to all the organs. Oxygen is required for respiration down even to the cellular respiration level, and from there onwards carbon dioxide is taken and excreted out of the body. Now beside the digestive system, then we have our excretory system. The excretory system requires to remove all waste material from the body. Again, a transport is involved in this. Then the hormones are secreted by endocrine glands. These glands are all ductless glands. So that means they don't have any tube or duct to carry them to the organ where it is required, to the target organ. Hence, what do these endocrine glands do? They release the hormones into the blood, and the blood carries them to the target organs. So having said that, we should understand that continuously throughout our body at various times we need to transport things. Hence the nature or the body has developed in such a way that there are fluids moving inside the body carrying out these various transport activities. Hence that brings us to our lesson on blood. So let us now understand what are the various kinds of fluid in our body, and which are the ones that move, which are the ones that remain in their place. Let's see what are the fluids in our body. Now two kinds, we can easily classify them broadly. I have classified in the form of a flow chart. You too should classify it in the form of a flow chart in your notebook so that it becomes easy to study. So we have two kinds, circulating fluids and non-circulating fluids. Non-circulating fluids. Circulating, the word itself tells you that this is moving. This is something that is moving. Now under circulating fluid we can see, let us list out the ones that are moving. We have blood, we have tissue fluid, and we have lymph. Now blood, suppose a question is asked, state the location of blood. So you can easily write heart and blood vessels. State the location of tissue fluid. Where is it located? In spaces between the cells in organs. So location of tissue fluid. Then lymph. Lymph, where is lymph located? We'll do these lymphs as we move after we learn the circulatory system. You will also learn this lymphatic system. Then we'll do it in detail. For now, you understand the location in the lymph vessels and in the lymphatic organs. These are lymphatic organs, spleen and tonsils. Now on the other side, let us come to the non-circulating fluid, synovial fluid. When we did the skeletal system, you understood where this synovial fluid is found. So in the cavities of the skeletal joint. Vitreous humor. The lesson prior to this we did the eye. So in the chamber at the back, the posterior one at the back, you can see in the eye, vitreous humor. This is a non-circulating fluid. It doesn't move. So broadly we can classify fluids into circulating and non-circulating fluids. Study the two kinds of circulatory system. Again, if we need to classify them on the basis of them being closed or open. So closed circulatory system is a system found in humans. So where it remains inside the vessels. So how does it happen in humans? Inside the heart, from the heart to the arteries and veins. And so the blood is circulating inside these vessels. Even the lymph is in its vessels. So little bit is out, but in closed circulatory system we can generally say that from the heart to the arteries, to the organ, and then to the veins. So inside these network of tubules, the blood moves. So closed circulatory system. Open circulatory system is found in insects, where between the spaces, among the spaces, so the blood circulates in those spaces. So it makes it an open circulatory system. Now if we see a conventional diagram, anytime we are looking at a diagram of the heart along with the arteries and veins, we find that the arteries are always colored bright red in color and the veins are colored blue. So if you look at elderly people, sometimes you'll see their hands and all the veins, especially here in the wrist and all, you'll find the veins looking quite blue. Why this happens? Why the veins look blue? Because of the very thin wall of the veins. But actually the blood inside the veins will be more on the dark purplish reddish side. So it is red but very dark red. But in a diagram, because we are studying it, it's better to color the veins blue and the arteries red. Now it is said that the arteries are, they are carrying only oxygenated blood. But no, yes, they are carrying oxygenated blood, but there are some anomalies. As we go through the structure of the heart and the blood circulatory system, you will understand that not all arteries are carrying oxygenated blood. There are exceptions. Anomalies means exceptions. Same thing is true for veins also. It's not like all the veins are carrying deoxygenated blood. Again, there are exceptions to that. So that is why the diagram shows it like blue and red. So always imagine in your mind that veins have been colored blue for the convenience of study. Actually the blood inside them is darkish, more on the darker side in comparison to the one in the arteries. Let us now study the properties of blood. A few are listed down here for you. Always in motion. I have put this as the first point here. Always in motion. That means blood is always circulating. Imagine a state where the blood circulation stops. Maybe the organism would be dead also. So always in motion, always moving. What is the color of blood? So you can say in the arteries. Okay, in the arteries, I am mentioning it here as A. Okay, A for arteries I am saying, and V for veins. So in the arteries, what is the color? Bright red. Bright red. And here in the veins, dark red. Dark, more on the purplish side. Dark red. Alright, what is the volume of blood in an adult? About 5 to 6 liters. 5-6 liters. Alright. What is the taste of blood? Blood. If you have injured your finger or not, sometimes we tend to put our cut finger in our mouths. You must have tasted blood. So it is like saltish. Saltish in taste. What is the pH of blood? Between 7.3 to 7.4. What does it make it? Slightly on the alkaline side. Let us now study the functions of blood. So, two main functions performed by blood: transport and protection. First, let us study transport. What all is being transported via blood? Food. From where? From the alimentary canal to the various tissues, cells in the body. So, food is being transported via blood. Oxygen. Now, oxygen, this is hemoglobin. This is the formula here for hemoglobin. Now this hemoglobin has a great affinity for oxygen. This is an unstable compound. So quickly it combines with oxygen and it is carried in the form of oxyhemoglobin. Remember this word, oxyhemoglobin. So oxygen combines with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. Carbon dioxide. How it is carried? Again hemoglobin. It forms this carbaminohemoglobin and it allows carbon dioxide to be transported via the blood. So remember these two names very well. When it combines with oxygen, what is formed? When it combines with carbon dioxide, what is formed? And this is hemoglobin. This is an unstable. It is unstable. Quickly when it forms this compound is unstable. When it combines with hemoglobin, it forms this unstable compound, oxyhemoglobin. This is also an unstable compound. So it is carried in the form of carbaminohemoglobin. Excretory material. Excretory material is dealt by our bodies in various ways. First, it is taken, whatever has to be removed or reabsorbed, that is taken by kidneys, liver, break down into simpler forms, break them into non-toxic forms, and then it is excreted out of the body. But how it is transported? By the blood. The blood carries it and transports it. Hormones, again, endocrine glands, they secrete hormones. Glands are located in one place, the target organ is in another place, and these are ductless, hence they have to be sent to the target organ. They are target specific. So, target organs, they are sent through the blood. Heat, equal distribution of heat to all the parts of the body is also dealt with by the blood transporting heat. Everything here is transported via the blood. Now let us study how the blood protects the body. Formation of clot. Suppose there is an injury somewhere on the body, somebody has got hurt, it will bleed that part. So after a while the bleeding stops. How it stops? Because clot has been formed there. The purpose of this clot is to stop the bleeding. If that clot was not formed, then the entire blood inside the body would have come out of the body and the person could have been in a very bad state or maybe even died. So formation of clot is even a small injury could have really emptied the whole body of the blood. Now there is another condition, hemophilia, that we'll do later as we study genetics, and then you will understand that is a genetic condition. That's a different condition where the blood doesn't clot. But here understand that blood forms these clots so that the bleeding stops and that place which is injured is actually plugged. Once it's plugged, germs also can't enter inside. So the clot has 2-3 important things to do, like stopping the blood and also not allowing the entry of germs. There are WBC in the blood. What do? They engulf bacteria. That means they are like the soldiers of the body. Whenever these bacteria enter the body, the WBC fight with them, they engulf them, they destroy them. Antitoxins and antibodies, they are also very important as a defense system. They stop the poisonous germs from moving, and they produce antibodies which remain in the body and protect it from further infection. So this is how the protection part of the blood works, the protective function of the blood works. Let us now study the composition of blood. Now I have listed here in the form of a flow chart. You too can do the same. Now if we look at, we can clearly divide it. This is the plasma. This is the liquid part of the blood. About 50-60% of the blood is the blood plasma, the liquid part. What does it contain? Water, inorganic salts, other substances, proteins, all these are there in plasma. Then we have the cellular elements, also known as the formed elements of blood. Again, we can classify them further. Red blood corpuscles. Remember the word corpuscles, we generally say cells. It's okay to say, but remember also to say red blood corpuscles. Also known as erythrocytes. You can also call them erythrocytes. The word erythro, it means red. So it completely, in some terms are such that with the name only you can understand a lot of things about them. So erythrocytes, red blood cells. Then we have WBC, leukocytes. Leuko means white. So hence WBC. Then we have blood platelets. Blood platelets play a major role in forming the blood clot, also known as the thrombus. Hence their name is thrombocytes. Now another term keeps on coming. What is the difference between plasma and serum? So what is serum? It is plasma minus protein fibrinogen. So if protein fibrinogen is removed from plasma, then it is called serum. This can be asked. You can be told to compare between plasma and serum, or a statement can be given, what is plasma minus protein fibrinogen, or a statement can be given, what is it called, what do we say when plasma is removed from, when this protein fibrinogen is removed from plasma, so it is called serum. Remember these two names, remember their definitions, they are important to know. Let us now study the red blood cells. Short form is RBC, also known as erythrocyte. I told you erythro means red. Now let us see what is the shape. It is a biconcave disc. See, it looks like a donut. In a donut there will be a hole or a gap here, but this is biconcave. Sideways if you look at it, it looks like this. Size very, very minute, about 7 microns. Life, how long does it live? 120 days, and after 120 days it is sent to the liver, the spleen, and there it is destroyed. About 1% is destroyed every day. Now these are some facts about RBC. RBC is a very special kind of cell. That is why we say it is deficient, yet it is efficient. How does its deficiency make it efficient? Now understand this. What does it not have? It doesn't have it doesn't have nucleus. So no nucleus. No endoplasmic reticulum. No endoplasmic reticulum. No mitochondria. These are the things that it does not have. Deficient. It is deficient in all these things. Now such important organelles of the cell, they are not there. Then what is left in the RBC? And why? There is a purpose to this. No nucleus means, suppose there's a nucleus, there's a hard structure here somewhere. This RBC's work is to transport oxygen and carbon dioxide, transport of gases. So hence, if the nucleus is there, suppose it's a very, very thin capillary, very thin, and the RBC has to bend this way, so it folds upon itself, and if this nucleus was there, folding would become very difficult. It bends upon itself and it becomes very flexible so that it can oxygen even to the last cell in the body. So its deficiency makes it more efficient. Then no endoplasmic reticulum. Now you know, suppose there's a cell here, this is a nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum is spread here like a mesh. So if this endoplasmic reticulum is there, it loses its flexibility. It makes it little more harder and very difficult to bend over itself and fold itself. So absence of endoplasmic reticulum again helps it to be flexible. No mitochondria. Mitochondria, if the mitochondria was there, the oxygen would be used up here. Then what would it transport? Hence, no mitochondria. It helps it. All the oxygen that it is carrying, everything is transported because mitochondria is not there to use it up. So cellular respiration, that oxygen will not be used up in it. So these things are there that are deficient in it. This deficiency adds to its ability to carry out its function very well. Then what does it have? What does it contain? It contains hemoglobin. Hemoglobin. Now what does this hemoglobin do? It has a great affinity for oxygen and it combines quickly, makes the unstable compound which I just mentioned to you. Oxyhemoglobin, when it combines with carbon dioxide, it again becomes carbaminohemoglobin. So quickly this helps to carry the oxygen and carbon dioxide. Thereby its presence in the red blood cells makes the red blood cell more efficient in carrying. Now look at the shape of the red blood cell. The shape is such, biconcave, see, biconcave disc. So the surface area is more, it is spongy. It is spongy and it has this surface area. So its sponginess and this extra surface area, it helps it to carry more amount of oxygen, more amount of these respiratory gases, thereby increasing its surface area. Easy for diffusion to happen and more amount of gases can be carried. So though the red blood cells are deficient, it makes them efficient in their work, plus this hemoglobin, the presence of hemoglobin helps it to carry these gases, and its shape helps it to have a greater surface area to transport these gases. More surface area means more transport of gases. Let us now revise quickly some facts about hemoglobin. What is hemoglobin? It is a respiratory pigment found in the red blood cells and we write it like this. Oxyhemoglobin, it is an unstable compound formed when oxygen is combined with hemoglobin. Hemoglobin has a great affinity for oxygen. Same way, carbon dioxide, again an unstable compound, carbaminohemoglobin is formed when carbon dioxide combines with hemoglobin. Now, there is carbon monoxide here. This is not an unstable compound, this is a stable compound. So, question is asked that why shouldn't people sleep in a poorly ventilated room where there is a furnace or a heater? Because it reduces its oxygen carrying capacity. Quickly carbon monoxide is formed. The oxygen in the room is used up because of the burning furnace, because of the heater. It is used up. So there will be lack of oxygen. Carbon monoxide poisoning can be caused and it can even result in death of that person who is sleeping in the room. So because of this, presence of this is formed. When it combines with a stable compound is formed, and this is poisonous, it's toxic in nature. Two other terms keep coming. So polycythemia and erythropenia. This is the abnormal increase in the number of RBCs. And this is the abnormal decrease in the number of RBCs. So these are both conditions. Remember these names, write their spellings correctly. You can be asked to compare these conditions. So abnormal increase, abnormal decrease in the number of RBCs. Let us now study the white blood cells. These are some features of the white blood cells. Where are they produced? In the red bone marrow in the lymph nodes, sometimes even in the liver and spleen. The average lifespan is about 2 weeks, but neutrophils are destroyed in like few hours. So it depends. This is just an average number. Where are they destroyed? Same as they are as the RBC is destroyed in the spleen, liver and bone marrow. Now here we have two terms, leukemia and leukopenia. Remember these terms that you can be asked to compare. What is leukemia? It's like cancer. Blood cancer is also called leukemia. Over there, these number of leukocytes, blood cells, white blood cells, also known as leukocytes, they increase many-fold. Their number goes up abnormally and at the cost of RBC. So cancer is a fatal disease. What happens in this? Number of RBCs, they decrease because WBCs are going up in number at the cost of the RBCs. Hence, this is a disease, cancer of the blood. Then we have leukopenia. It is the abnormal decrease in the number of RBCs. So anything other than normal is a condition which can be called a disease. So learn to compare these two. Remember their spellings, write their names correctly. Also white blood cells. Let's see. Let us also go back and remember. I had taught you just now before this. So when we are writing that, what are we saying? We are saying they are leukocytes. Leukocytes. What does this mean? What does this part mean? It means white. Okay. So the name itself tells you that these are white blood cells. Mainly their function is defense. Now let us study the functions of the WBCs. I have mentioned a word here, phagocytosis, diapedesis. Let us see what are these two words and what do they mean. Now suppose this is a blood vessel. Here we have the RBCs, donor shaped RBCs. Then we have all over flowing through the blood. As you can see them, they are moving through the blood. Also you can see some platelets are moving here. And then there are other components of the blood. Suppose there is an attack by germs here. Let's say these are germs. They are coming. Bacteria are coming. And here also in this blood we have our WBCs. Monocytes, lymphocytes and all. Now what does this WBC do? This is a WBC. I am not labeling the others. So this WBC, it squeezes out of the walls like this. It will squeeze out of the walls. Next step will be it will squeeze out of the walls like this. It will come out like this and finally it will come out of the walls. And it will go here and it will come this way and it will engulf these. After a while you will find all these bacteria inside. I am not drawing the nucleus on purpose, it is engulfing, and in the end you will find like this. All the bacteria are being engulfed slowly. And in the end the bacteria will be inside them, they will engulf them and they will destroy them. This coming out, squeezing out of the walls of these blood vessels, this is called diapedesis. It moves across the blood vessels, it comes out, squeezes out of the wall and goes and catches the bacteria. And this process where it is catching the bacteria, engulfing them and destroying them, this is called phagocytosis. It goes like this and catches them and destroys them. Remember these two terms very well, phagocytosis and diapedesis. Now let's come to inflammation. When somebody gets hurt somewhere, you will find that area has become red, it has become swelly. It is because of this, that is a condition called inflammation. The WBC have come there, especially the monocytes, neutrophils, they squeeze out of the wall, they come there, they destroy. Some tissue cells also get destroyed. So that area becomes inflamed. So remember this term again, inflammation, that is also because of the processes that are happening done by the WBC coming there, attacking the germs, destroying them, the area becomes inflamed over there. So it is also one of the functions of the WBC. Now one more term comes, pus. Suppose WBCs have come to a place where there has been a bacterial invasion and injury. So the dead tissue cells along with the dead WBCs fight these germs. That forms pus, remember this term. Then antibodies. The vaccines that are made are also made on this principle. What happens whenever a dead or a weakened bacteria is given to a person? Now what is a vaccine? It is a dead or a weakened germ it causes the germ that is causing an illness, a disease, a condition. So a vaccine is given, a dead or a weakened germ is given. So what happens? The body understands these toxins, and that germ, what it will do, it will produce toxins. Now these toxins these toxins will cause that condition in that person. But the body's defense system produces antibodies. That means WBCs over there. These antibodies, they combat the effect of these toxins, these germs, and destroy them. So, but this remains, the body remembers this. Whenever there is another attack by the same bacteria or the same disease causing germ, the antibodies are already present in the blood. These antibodies do not allow a second infection. Therefore, they say when a person is given a vaccine, then that person doesn't get those diseases. So remember these terms: antibodies, antitoxins, toxins, remember pus. So, and understand the functions of the WBD. Main function is protection. Protection from what? From germs. From any other thing that is entering, any other foreign invasion is there on the body. So, the WBCs have modified themselves. They are able to do all these processes to protect the body. So, they play a major role in protection of the body. Let us now study the types of WBCs. For a broad classification, we have divided them into granulocytes and agranulocytes. Granulocytes, the name itself tells you that the cytoplasm has these granules. Hence, it is granular. If we compare it with agranulocytes, there are no granules, non-granular cytoplasm. Again, granulocytes, if we compare them on the basis of their shape of their nucleus, so these have a lobed nucleus. That means the nucleus, suppose this is a granulocyte, the nucleus may be in the form of lobes like this, okay, with granules in the cytoplasm. So it is one nucleus, but it is lobed. And agranulocyte, single large nucleus. Let's draw an agranulocyte, no grains, and one single large nucleus. Granulocytes and agranulocytes. These are the various criteria for comparison. Now let us study the granulocytes. Again, we can divide them into three types: neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. The name says neutro, here it says eosino, baso. That means the name itself suggests that it is based on the types of stains that are used to stain them. So neutro, they are stained with neutral dyes. Neutral dyes, we take them as the name neutrophils. Eosinophils, they stain with eosin. Eosin is an acidic dye. Basophils, they are stained with basic dyes. That's why the name basophil. Now let us see the shape of the nucleus. Neutrophils, nucleus is 3 to 4 lobed. See, I have drawn a 3 lobe, and the cytoplasm is granular because it is a granulocyte. Look at this one, eosinophils, 2 lobed nucleus. Here N is for nucleus, so 2 lobed. See, we have drawn a 2 lobe structure. Cytoplasm again has these granular cytoplasm. Basophils, indistinct. Lobes are there, but they are not completely separated. Hence, indistinct. Again, cytoplasm is granular. Now, what are the functions of neutrophil? They engulf the bacteria. Where are they formed? They are formed in the bone marrow. Engulfing bacteria means, you can see they go whenever these bacteria, germs that causes diseases, they come in, they attack the body, and neutrophils will engulf them and destroy them. So, neutrophils, remember the name neutro. Neutro is coming from the word, it can be stained with neutral dyes. Remember the shape of the nucleus and the lobes. And also remember that there are granules in the cytoplasm. Eosinophils, again their purpose is also engulf bacteria associated with allergies. So if anyone has allergies and they go to the doctor for a blood test, you will find higher number of these. So they secrete antitoxins. Anti means against, toxins means poisons. The antitoxins, from where do they enter the body? When the germs enter the body, when something that causes an allergic reaction enters the body, they produce these poisons. So these are there to combat them, to fight with them. Main purpose of our WBC leukocyte is what? It is, to protection of the body. So they protect. We can say they protect the body from what? From invasion of germs. Now let us look at the basophils. What do? They release chemicals for inflammation. That chemical is called histamine. I am mentioning it here. Cause dilation of blood vessels. So they release chemicals for inflammation. This is that chemical, histamine, which causes dilation of blood vessels. Now let us see the types of agranulocytes. 2 kinds again, lymphocytes, monocytes. These are the ones, lymphocytes, monocytes. Because they are agranulocytes, naturally in their cytoplasm, look here, there is no granules. This is the nucleus. One single large nucleus. Here also one single large nucleus, because they are in this category. Now, lymphocytes, see, single large nucleus, even monocytes, single large nucleus. So, if you are asked a question, which is the smallest WBC? It is the lymphocytes, and the largest WBC? Monocytes. Monocytes engulf bacteria. Again, they go out, they engulf bacteria. They move out by the process of diapedesis and by phagocytosis. They catch the bacteria and they destroy them. Whereas the lymphocytes, they produce antibodies. These antibodies, vaccinations, the making of vaccination is based on the same principle that weakened germs are put into the body which produce antibodies. The body remembers the germs. So these antibodies, they freely float in the plasma, and when there is an invasion, they go and engulf those germs and they protect the body. So WBC, entirely it is used for protection. Look at the nucleus of these two. This is one large, this is kidney shaped, bean shaped. See? You can see. Easily a monocyte. First of all, it's very large, it is non-granular, and you can easily recognize it by the shape of its nucleus.